Welcome back. My next guest has an interesting take when it comes to Wall Street. He says the financial markets, the people who run them, are the biggest racket on the planet. You can bet after a week like this, he has a few choice words as well. I know a lot of people do. He's the author of the book, The Noisemakers, Why They Keep Losing Your Money and How to Make It Stop. And he's also the president of the Orr Financial Group. Thank you so much for being here. This is Steve Orr. Thanks for coming in.
Good to be here, Eric.
All right, and you've come quite a long way. You've come from Texas.
That's right. I'll see if I can throw in a little accent for you today.
All right. Let's get right to it. First, let's ask, who are the noisemakers here?
Well, you know, there's various noisemakers. They exist in the government and they exist in the business world. In the investment world, they seem to be the big companies, you know, the ones that have all the money. They tell you that past performance is not an indication of future return, that asset allocation, if you have large caps, small caps, mid caps, and you have international bonds, long-term bonds, short-term bonds, and all that stuff, and you have a 50-50 portfolio, you're very conservative, and you will do very well if you just hang in there for the long term. Now, you can see how well that's worked, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they kind of couple that with paying large fines on an annual basis. They call the regulators, they give big political contributions, and so they get regulations made that are more advantageous to what they do than really what results are for the investor. And so I can tell you that this asset allocation model doesn't work, because if you did that, you just lost a ton of money, right? Yeah, so what you might have wanted to do over the last 6 months is say, you know, they're not doing things right in Washington, D.C. It's looking pretty bad with what's going on. So
let's talk about that for a second, because we saw the whole debt deadlock. It came right to the very last second to get the debt deal, and then, of course, there was a debt downgrade. What's your thoughts on all that?
I mean, what else is going to happen? It'd be like if you had a $400,000 house and you couldn't make the payment on the $400,000 house, so you thought the way you would improve your credit rating would be to go out and borrow more money. Right, that's going to do really a good job on your credit rating. But up in Washington, D.C., for some reason, they can think that that idea will absolutely work. And it's absolutely impossible for it to work. But, you know, to them, Washington, D.C., it's the idea. The idea is what they worship. Whether it works or not is really not of consequence, as long as they're saying the same things. And that's the problem that we're having today. It doesn't work. How
is the system broken? What's the best way to fix it?
Well, the best way to fix it is, number one, you've got to do the government thing, and you've got to stop the spending. And it's real easy. Look, we spend 60% we pay for what we're spending. 40% we have to borrow. Well, if you go back to 2008 levels, we saved 24% immediately, right? Mm-hmm. So you really only have to cut the government 16%. But what's really heinous about the whole thing is they have this thing called baseline budgeting, which every year the amount that they spend is going to go up 7%. Well, if you just cap that at zero, you save $9 trillion over the next 7 to 9 trillion. The numbers vary from day to day, but over the next 10 years, you can see how easy that is.
So I
to
suppose
solve.
There's another argument for a balanced budget amendment.
Well, yeah, why wouldn't we want to do that? You know, if you have to do it at home, why wouldn't you want to do it in Washington, D.C.? Because you have to control these people. Remember, bureaucrats are there to make their little system bigger. That's the way they've always done it, and they always will if you allow them to do it. So you have to say, this is it. The problem that you have if you have only a balanced budget amendment is they'll just make the budget bigger. You know, so you have to have a way, you can only cap that at a certain percentage of your GDP. And so every year, of course, then they'll figure out a way to manipulate the numbers on GDP. You have to keep real strict tabs on these folks and what they're doing up there.
All right, so let's get back to the individual investor here. What can the investor do to navigate this system in the state that it's in right now?
Well, number one is we live in the richest country in the world, supposedly. I don't know if it is anymore. But they don't teach us how it works. That's not an accident that you go through school and don't learn anything. You know, there's a bunch of asset classes other than just the stock and the bond market. There's non-traded real estate, oil and gas, futures, equipment leasing, senior secured notes, private equity, and tax credits. Most investors out there don't know about those because the big investment companies, which are marketing companies, do not tell you that those exist. Why? They don't have them. So if they don't have them, you don't get to know about it. And then they go to the regulators and say, you know, these things are kind of risky. You better not put that in your portfolio, because if you do that, you know, people are going to lose money. And the regulators, oh, that's a good idea, because we don't know how the investment system works anyway, so we'll take your advice, we'll make a regulation. Your advisor is no longer your advisor. Your advisor is the regulators that are manipulated by the big companies.
So on a week like this week that we just had, what do you say to people who are just frightened out of the markets altogether?
Well, good idea. You know, and so, yeah, I'm not real smart, but I have a keen eye for the obvious. But what you do is you do the smart things in the market if you want to be in that. And so what you should have done over the last 6 months is move out of the market per se, the large cap, the mid caps, and go, if you want to be in the market, and go into the gold type assets, the commodity type assets, oil and gas and energy, which will take a dip, but you'll see that they'll come back. And because the herd goes there, you want to be in front of the herd all the time.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. Thank you so much for being here, Eric. Appreciate it. All right, and if you have any questions or comments about today's interview, send them to me at itsyourmoney@news12.com. It's Your Money. We'll be right back right after this. Keep it right here.